Okay, thank you very much, Matthias. And now we come to our last speaker, Farid Rakun. Farid, I'm very happy to welcome you here. And I also want to thank my former colleague, Katharina Gebbers, who was so kind to introduce me to Farid via email some time ago. And we've been corresponding ever since, I think. And so as you probably know, Farid Rakun is member of Ruang Grupa, who an artist group collective institution which has been appointed to be the artistic directors of the upcoming Documenta exhibition, which of course for Germans is also always very exciting. Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much for everyone who's here right now. This morning, Guten Morgen. I just learned German 2 months ago, so I'm sorry it's not that good yet. It's only a month, and then I need to go here, which is actually better right now, but it's non-existent still. And thank you also for like the talks before. I think it's kind of like useful to continue from that trajectory. As explained before as well, like I'm Farid Rakun, I'm part of Ruang Rupa, and then, wait, is this the way? No. How to do this? Okay, and then back is this one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, as usual, as more often than not, I'm here not only as myself, but also part of Ruang Rupa, which is kind of nice to say not I, but we. And then these are my friends, basically. Jumping from the one before, yeah, we're friends. We're not colleagues. We're not partners. Most of us didn't sleep with each other even, you know. So it's good. That's one way to make a collective that lasts almost for 20 years. Just don't sleep with each other. And then, we're part of a big network of artist collective as well, which I will talk about a little bit more. What I will do today is actually jump straight to, I just cut to the chase and talk about Documenta. And then explain how we got there afterwards. The working title is Lumbung, and then when we got invited to even propose something, we decided not to create a new concept of an exhibition. We kind of like re-invite the institution back of Documenta, whether they're interested in what we are already interested in. And we've already experimented with it, basically, back home with our own network. Lumbung is like directly translated is a rice barn, and then it's coming from a traditional concept of common resource governance. This building is one of example of a lumbung. These were like during colonial times. The one before is like more recent, but every village traditionally, if they're agricultural village in Indonesia, they have a lumbung in the middle of in the highest plane of the village, and then it's used to store harvest produce. A lot of them are surplus, and then seen as a resource. It can be used together or by the members of the village itself. We kind of like use that as a metaphor to do this. This is what we basically were interested in, and re-invite and ask Documenta whether they're interested to be part of it. It's like the collective pot in the middle. So Lumbung can be seen as a collective pot. Artistic practice, self-sustainability, as well as knowledge management. That's what we've been trying to do back home with not only Ruang Rupa, but also Serum, but also Grafis Ruhara, with a lot of other collectives from Indonesia, sometimes it's from Southeast Asia, sometimes from Asia, sometimes outside. But it's just like continuously expanded network of things. What we're trying to do with this is like to see for anyone who join us is a resource, and then it could be contribute something to the whole network, let's say. Thinking cooperatively is one thing, but that's not the only thing. So if Documenta join our network, basically, what could it be? What kind of resource it brings? From the brand itself, although it's problematic, we find, of course, because up until 14th edition from 1955, contexts like us, and then we're not alone in that, has not been represented. If this is the biggest and most important thing contemporary art has, it doesn't have to do anything with us up until recently, basically a couple of months ago, no? And we're not alone in that. And then in that kind of picture and understanding, we can only come from that understanding. What could it become? What could it change to, what could we use it for as well? Not only Documenta using us, that's hence the title actually. A lot of times we, as a smaller, not institution, but initiative, we practice parasitic way of doing things, especially if we get invited by bigger institutions than us. Sometimes successful, sometimes it's not. When it's not successful, the bigger institution became the predator of the smaller one. And then I think right now, but that way of thinking is not useful anymore, at least in our case. We just like need to work together somehow mutualistic in an ecosystem and bring something together. Hopefully something new, hopefully something refreshing, but of course failure is risk as well. So we'll see how it's going to pan out in the next few years. Why we did that is because like the first time I think like I talked to Anna Katerina, to Jenny as well, I was talking about like if you, I was just learning about this initiative of Global Museum, and then what, I've never worked in an institution, full disclaimer. So a lot of times like, I don't know how to run a museum, basically, that's it. But what I can contribute is actually our experience working with institutions like museums when we got invited by them. This is the starting point of our discussion, actually, to be honest. It's like when we were invited by MMCA Seoul, which is a totally different kind of ecosystem than museums and institutions in Germany, but we propose something that's very organic, let's say. We just want to make a market which is basically non-transactional, there's no money, and then as well as what we call pasar ilmu is knowledge market, directly translated. So people, whoever come, pair, hopefully strangers, and they can become teacher and student, changing positions like that in the course of 30 minutes, teaching whatever, and also learning whatever. But then, just having that, the museum erected this yellow structure and then asked us to work in it, which is basically very problematic. To work this kind of like, in this space, like imposed on us, no? This kind of stuff happened. We just like, basically hack it, make it ourselves, you know? Climb over it, use it not in a way that they were intended to be, etc. And then when they wanted to make a post-event catalog, they asked us to write something. I decided to write this. The title of the exhibition is How Little You Know About Me. This is basically like, it's oversimplistic. The language is like that, intentionally maybe even. But this is the stuff that I want to say to the MMCA at that moment of how actually to work with us. If someone wants to invite someone like us, a lot of times, which I will show you more later, uh, they it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible for practice like us to be absorbed by bureaucracy, which is basically a system of distrust. No, bureaucracy is put there because you don't, you're not friends to begin with, so you need to kind of like establish something in order for you to be sure that someone else will perform something for you. So that kind of stuff is just like partially comes from an ideology that we didn't work from the beginning, basically. So yeah, this kind of stuff we put, and then I don't know, maybe this is also like lip service, but like the curator said that it's like for the MMCA people, it's actually useful to be slapped in the face like that, but maybe not, maybe they're not happy, but that's all what we can basically communicate with, and hopefully it will be useful in the future. And yeah, so this is just short. Ask me later if you want the copy, and I'll give you very easily. It also came like that many false, like Fox Manifesto stuff also happened because we kind of like tried to write our own way to do stuff. In 2011, it's like a mash up of stuff that we wrote before, from conversations, reports, proposals, project writings for all those kind of stuff, and it happened in 2011, and then we're trying right now to revisit it because it's time to revisit, basically. That's why it's beta version. The alpha version never came. Maybe it's time. But it also, like, from in 2011, the siasat came from our kind of like previous experiences, including being included in biennials, for example. In Singapore, what happened was like we were roaming around the city for a couple of weeks. We managed. We didn't know what to do when we arrived, but then we kind of like talked to people, get some narrative from the street, all those kind of stuff, and then had to move in back to the museum-like space or museum space. And then when we told the curator what we wanted to do, basically also talking about Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore, they censored us. We kind of like, because in Singapore we just cannot talk about Lee Kuan Yew. So that again, like being unpredictable is also something difficult for institutions like Singapore Biennial to deal with. We got around it, of course. We asked forgiveness instead of permissions a lot of times. So we got our way, but it's like part of it. With Pompidou, it's another thing. This is much more parasitic. It becomes like ruang rupa parasite. We tried to actually like use everything that Pompidou is discarding at one moment, but then and to build our space, which is basically a living room for other people to use, like other groups use it. It's not planned. We didn't plan to do this. This is other groups in the exhibition use it in their own way, etc. But then even going to the storage room, not even collection room, the storage room, it was proven to be very difficult. We managed to make, like, that's basically a C. Twombly banner that we made into a projector screen, etc., etc. But like, as well as the extra prints of newspaper, which is basically an artist project that we made into a stool and table. But that's as much as we could. We couldn't make it into the library, for example, which is for us, the Pompidou Library is the best space the Pompidou has because it's free, it's public, it's also like, it's used by the immigrant communities to surf the internet and talk to home or all those kind of stuff. They discarded a lot of books every month. We couldn't get into that resource because the bureaucracy didn't let it happen. The curators helped us, but their hands were also tied at one point. Another thing is like Sao Paulo Biennial, which is like the building itself is already, I don't know, loaded, let's say. We tried to break it by building an architecture instead of an architecture. This is a radio tent, which basically housed a silent karaoke session. So people can hear, but other people cannot hear the song what they're singing, but other people can sing what they're singing. So like in the opening, the whole space was basically colonized by the voice of people singing. And then it's not only that, but also we kind of like ask a lot of friends that we met a couple of months ago. We built networks before, a couple of months ago, artist initiatives and collectives that didn't like the biennial, never thought that they're going to be in the biennial, etc. But we invite them to be part of our installation, basically. So a lot of Sao Paulo-based artists were taking part through our installation. The last one is coming back to, I think, can I just like play it by playing, yeah. The question of like, the next Documenta, will there be an exhibition? We got that a lot. I would say not to worry because we'll make an exhibition. The question is what kind of an exhibition it could be. It would be as well because it's not being secretive, but I just don't know. We know the process we're going through and then we're still doing it with all the challenges, but the end result we don't know yet because this is basically just showing you what we did as an artist collective, playing the role of curator the last time, also to 100,000 populated city back in the Netherlands. The scale is very small compared to Documenta, of course, but we managed to make an exhibition even by then. We couldn't like, you know, invested our time in the city itself at that moment properly, which is different than right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to celebrate Kassel as well in 2022. We don't have any plan, at least up until now, to take Documenta somewhere else in 2022. But it's just going to be a celebration of the city itself, and artworks or not, we're going to see. Maybe it's not important to think about certain things is an artwork or it's just a practice of something or a structure. What we did here is basically asking artists to make a space instead of make something that you only can see or listen or whatever, but you can experience as well. And then the museum became a very different space as well. At least for us, it becomes a social space because 100 days of something is still space that we can use. Those statistics is actually important because then we open the work for a lot of initiatives from the citizens of the city to do anything, from yoga, weddings, you see, number of bubble gums shoot, birthday parties, even concerts, all those kind of stuff. And it's nice to think that it's not transactional in the end. If there's an institution doing something in your city, it doesn't mean that it always basically like for the citizen, it's a money cow. It can be something else if it can be owned by a lot of other parties, basically. On that note, I hope I didn't speak too long. Thank you very, very much.